Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating five bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Dwayne the Great Writer and Seer.
This real side experience would begin with my encountering of another expression of a consciousness affected body form. For indeed, anything is possible in a creation in regards to form and a feature, for as a consciousness is the engine room, that effected from its design is whatever is decided, as every awareness operating in a creation has an array of a body vehicle mechanics, through which the ideas as created through them, or the ideas as created by others and agreed with, which then are consciousness installed, where manifested is the corresponding simulation. Really then there is no limit to the nature of the simulated ideas we can potentially experience. Through that which we set agreements with, focus on, that which claims our attention, our drives, inclinations and intents, so body forms will be affected accordingly, that we can experience all that we choose and desire through. As we always are the experience of ourself, of our consciousness creation, its design will affect our creational positioning and body forms in equal measure. Generally speaking, the more abhorrent and abrasive of others are our actions, the more we will be positioned in creation in areas that reflect such poor life choices, the more dismal regions, and additionally will our body forms be as distorted as the consciousness we forge. In reality, then, it is the same real awareness animating through all consciousness affected body types, that irrespective of their design, underlying it will be the same isness recognizing imperative, and ultimately we come to recognize the distinction between the created personal self-consciousness of others and the real awareness that they actually are. And in creation, it's simply a case of the personal self creating its circumstances according to its free will idea generating desires, and we can be shown all the endless variety and expression of the choices that the various personal selves have been making, and the situations, lifetimes and body forms they have effected for themselves as a consequence. Everything transpiring in creation are really just cause and simulation effect choices that ultimately serve as comparisons for ears recognition, regardless of their nature, and it just depends on if the real awareness animating through the various body forms decides to recognize the ears, bring the created personal self on board, and that all the situations, dramas, and lifetimes in creation are seen for what they actually are, simulated unrealities. As I said, I would encounter a particular body type as effected from a consciousness, which took the form of what can be best described as a vast, expansive slime. Impressions suggested that this was a body type where the secondary personal self had been established, a form that wasn't directly animated by the real awareness prior to the formulation of the personal self through the free will creating of ideas via the body vehicles. The consciousness was of a particular then that effected would be a body form of this kind that not only was somewhat monstrous to behold, but had additionally the consciousness decided ability and inclination to operate in a destructive capacity. For this form was vast, as I said, its overall mass somewhat incalculable, and quite able to operate outside of planets also within the medium of space, and indeed so it would drift from planet to planet and encompass the entirety of the surface with its mass, where it would proceed to assimilate every expression of a body form present. For anything making a contact with its extensive, planet-covering slime-like mass would be absorbed into it and effectively destroyed. This was its singular compulsion then, to consume all life on every planet it reached, that once the planets were devoid of body types, so it would detach from the planet and begin a new search for another planet. As I said, it was sentient, it possessed of a degree of intelligence, the secondary self established, and as I would witness the devastation it was causing, so I would attempt to approach and engage with it. It is so that every situation that occurs between body forms is according to an agreement contract they have established between themselves. For indeed, a body type may be very powerful, but as I am the decider of my experience, based on the ideas I have installed in my consciousness, despite the might of a body form, it can only impact my experience adversely and in relation to myself if I have the idea agreements that allow that it can. Absent of the idea, and no simulation can follow. A monstrous creature may attempt to destroy me, but for it to do so, required is it that I have the agreements specifically permitting this situation to be so. Just like computer game characters, the extent, if at all, that they can impact each other is all according to the data files that effects as this potentiality, and the simulators and the body forms effected from a consciousness operate by these same computer-like principles. The entirety of creation, then, is just a constant arranging and rearranging of ideas through agreements that affect the various situations between individuals that they will. And so it is that the body types, the species that were subjected to this vast slime creature's voracious appetite, must have extended agreement to the creature that this is their experiential effect, by whatever means and mechanisms this agreement was secured. In reality, the species of the planets that fall to this slime creature have extended the role by which it can operate in this capacity. Although, just because we are afforded the agreement welcome mat that we can operate in destructive ways of others, it still falls upon us to decide if we will in fact do so. As everything's a choice, we need not harm others, even should they have the idea agreements in their consciousness, which affords us then the means and opportunity. And so it was that I would attempt to have this creature decide differently, that despite it being agreement permitted to consume planets of their species, there always are alternatives to the choices we have been indulging in even for the longest time, that in actuality this slime creature didn't even need to consume other body types. This wasn't action born of necessity, as with the predatory animals who require the consumption of other forms for their maintenance. More so, that this is simply what it decided to do. It had the capability, and this was the habitual routine of its personal self. I myself would lack agreements where it could in any way harm or absorb my form, and so safe was it for me to locate directly into its presence, wherever in creation it currently was residing, and so vast was the creature that it was as though I were on a huge island comprising of a pink slime and writhing tentacles. I was able to establish a contact with it telepathically, the real awareness affording the simulation inserted forms everything required for every eventuality, including communicating with the slime creatures, and I would begin to impress upon it the possibility that through making better choices, through setting alternative intents, through installing different created ideas into its consciousness, other than those affecting as its current body type and circumstances, so could it manifest for itself different options and body forms. For it surely was not content as it was. It had a sense of loneliness about it, and seemed eager to improve its assimilated experience. The sense was that it was receptive to the option of the awareness process, and so very possibly this was an opportunity to not only bring to an end the destructive actions of another body form, but that of the personal self of it, considering the merits of his recognition. As I said earlier, this is the underlying drive of real awareness, that of his recognition, regardless of how the consciousness has been constructed and has affected the creational operating body types, and we rather operate throughout multi-dimensional creation, affording this real option and alternative to all body forms indiscriminately. In an unrelated scene that followed, I and a group of other beings, also on their respective processes of awareness, would be providing a performance for an audience of assorted alien body types. It reminded me of the real side experience I shared a month or so ago, where I and a group were effectively conveying all the references in regards to a creation, its cause and effect nature, the life levels and so forth, to another audience of various alien body types. It was as though that this is rather a constant on the real side, not just that of sharing the new you, the opportunity of the ears, and information regarding the creational mechanics, but doing so in this particular way, by presenting it as a show, and bringing in all the various elements, features, props, and special effects required that we captivate the audience's attention. That, as I said, impressions revealed, our real side shows are a constant, but the personal self will not be shown every show we execute, more so just the occasional glimpse and reminder of this means of his reference sharing, as was the case here, as the group and myself would be conveying references pertaining to the body types operating in creation, as we would now be revealing information regarding the dark force reptilians, so we would each assume a reptilian form to emphasize that which we were divulging, for a more audience immersive and visual experience. Of course, most aliens will be aware of the reptilians, unless they are a suppressed species rendered oblivious of them, such as humanity generally, but our alien audience hadn't realized the extent of reptilian dominion over the simulator, that they control every dimensional level of it, including and up to the ethereal, the highest level literally speaking, and where positioned as the overseer is another reptilian, the supreme deceptor, etc. Our audience were receptive to what we were revealing. We were not pelted with the alien equivalent of rotten fruit, and as we exited the building where our performance had taken place, we would be met with several human in appearance body types. That impressions revealed were real guides. The guides would be operating as though in the capacity here of our agents, in that they would provide us with the details regarding where in creation our next performance was to be, as though the guides were making all the necessary arrangements, and then relocating us to the next multi-dimensional position where we would execute our next real reference and awareness show, as though we were on a tour throughout creation. In the following scene, I would find myself in my consciousness representing former UK house recreated on the real side. Present within would be Dwayne and several other individuals, that as we all were featuring on the ground floor of the house, so with the house representing the consciousness, this was more than indicative of a conscious, physical level personal self-agreement I had with Dwayne and these other individuals. For the consciousness will comprise of every idea agreement we ever had formulated since first entering the simulators, including the ideas that are the consciousness affecting body forms of others. That the bulk of the consciousness, the subconscious, we will be unconscious of as to the ideas it comprises of, but still will we be the effects of its construct, and potentially then any individual we ever had forged agreement with, even with the realization of this being beyond the current lifetime body memory files, that the personal self is oblivious of this being so, that every individual as an installed idea in a consciousness can feature in our experiences, physical level and real side, at any moment of their choosing. In our consciousness representing houses, the unconscious agreements and attachments with others will have them operating more so in what would generally be construed as the storage areas of the house, the attic, the basement, closets, etc., and the conscious agreements we have with individuals will have them featuring on the ground floor, such as was the case here with Dwayne and the group also present. Very likely they then were new friends, although their identities were not made apparent. It was as though an assignment had been discussed and presented as an option, but at the point where my personal self was afforded this view, So had this a part of the experience, for the personal self at any rate, been missed, although the real awareness, as part of the isness everything that animates through all consciousness effected form and feature, so available to the real awareness is every idea that creation is effected from, and so the assignment in its entirety would be known to the real awareness. On exiting the house, then, I would find myself in what impressions revealed was an era of earth around the early 1900s. For from the isness everything perspective, every idea of a consciousness is present, and only through the consciousness effected body form mechanics are these ideas processed in linear sequences of cause and effect time frames. In reality, where I am creationally placed, is according every moment to the agreements that my consciousness comprises of, and where the body form afforded experiences of these agreements can be so, and where I was placed previously, creational wise, would be the agreements I previously held to, which affected me within the position prior to the one I currently am operating within, but that as I retain a memory of where I had been, so I would construe this from a personal perspective as the past, etc. And yet all ideas are present in reality. It just depends which of the ideas we currently are effecting for ourselves as a simulation through the consciousness agreement construct. The real awareness is aside from the mechanics which isolate specific ideas as experiential simulation, and so is a position where all consciousness effecting assimilation is present, and the body forms can be placed within any idea within overall consciousness, be it the past, present, or as in the case of effects yet to be processed through to the physical, the future. The assignment was along the lines then of making an adjustment to what would be the past, so-called, of the human experience, that as the ideas change, so must the affected simulation, which from a creational personal self body form mechanics perspective, so the past would be altered, which would ripple through to the present, so-called, as a changed simulation experience consequently. In reality, if we are on such assignments, we are reordering the ideas of a consciousness, be it individually, species, collectively, or overall consciousness that affects the entire simulator, that then will express as alteration to the effects, the situations and circumstances of the individual, species, or simulator. Very likely then, this assignment was to make such alterations to the human timeline from this early 1900s position, which would ripple through to the present moment as more awareness and life advantageous circumstances for the human race overall. Although I wouldn't reach the moment where my operation could be executed, as I somewhat contracted a kind of a body form debilitating malaise that rendered myself immobile. For I have shared on previous real side experiences that as I go about my assignments, I oftentimes can take on additional, unforeseen ideas that translate through as not only affecting my real side body form adversely, but as everything begins on the real side and eventually filters through to the physical, the debilitating idea agreements we maintain that will impact the physical at some stage, as everything starts on the real side, then filters through. So were these inadvertently trawled agreements not released, they would have expressed as adversely impacting of the physical level body form also in whatever way they might. In this case, I had taken on an idea distortion that had immobilized my real side body form, as I said, for as we operate in multi-dimensional creation, we must agree with the ideas that affect the environments we intend to feature in, and on occasion, the ideas that affect the environments we are to operate in may include those which adversely impact the body forms real awareness is operating through. It can be said that the body form is the product of its environment, and should the environment have a certain idea that can translate as a taint or malaise, as we operate in the various alien worlds and planets we do, we can take on more than we realized, idea agreement-wise, and then is the necessity of determining these ideas and releasing them, like wiping mud from our real side traversing boots. As I laid there, however, afflicted through my early 1900s earth-inserted body form, I would be found by a group of young teenagers, and they would carry me to what would be a medical building. There I would remain, that although the body form was unconscious, the real awareness maintained its oversight of what was transpiring, and affording the personal self all that which was occurring in the immediate vicinity of the simulated form, the hospital I was in. Interestingly, my personal self would have its attention drawn to a particular conversation being held among a group of doctors who were assigned the care of my currently unconscious body form. They would speak of how they never knew that one such as I existed, and that only had there been rumours circulating as to the existence of those such as myself. Impressions suggested that on many an occasion had NuFriends and other aware beings been inserted into what would be construed as the past on the earth, and who knows how many other planets and species, for various assignments, etc., and although most undoubtedly went about their business unnoticed, now and again they would be perhaps exposed in some way or another, and that, as they were extracted from the time era they were in, all that remained would be rumours, legends, and stories of these, what have been popularly termed as walk-ins. Quite clearly, something of my 1900s inserted body form had somewhat made apparent as to my being not from the time period I was operating within, and so I had been categorized as one of these anomalies, the walk-ins, etc., that very likely have featured throughout humanities' history. The experience would end there, however. Very likely my body form would regain its consciousness, complete whatever it was there to do in early 1900s Earth, but even if unable, for whatever reason, regardless, my form would at some point be extracted, and become just another human experience anomaly, myth, or fable.